smart enough to win. That's how the story starts. Learning is the edge that sets your work apart. When the stakes get high and the pressure never stops, smart learning in your pocket puts your business at the top.
Welcome to the Learning Advantage, from Insight to Impact, where we're going to show how smart learning fuels real business results. I'm Deb Laurel, and I'm your host. Hello, and welcome to everyone who is watching now. For over 40 years, Laurel and Associates Limited has worked alongside national and international managers to help them successfully manage employees and create and maintain a positive, supportive, and healthy work environment where employees want to stay and do their best. We focus on making lackluster leaders legendary. The purpose of the Learning Advantage, from Insight to Impact, is to discuss how smart learning fuels real business results. In each episode, we strive to deliver actionable strategies, evidence-based design tips, and real-world case studies that show how learning strengthens organizational health, advances sustainability, and drives profitability. And for that reason, I'm delighted to introduce our guest for today, Dr. Frumi Rachel Barr. Dr. Barr is a CEO advisor, scale-up strategist, fractional CFO, AI generalist, and author who helps founder-led companies turn complexity into clarity and growth into sustainable scale. Through Scale-Up Advisors, she brings together what she calls the 3 seats approach: financial leadership, growth architecture, and AI-powered leverage, giving CEOs the strategic perspective they need without building an executive team. Having served as CEO of 3 companies and CFO of 2 others, Frumi now works alongside founders and leadership teams navigating rapid growth, capital raises, organizational challenges, and strategic inflection points. She helps leaders move from reacting to today's problems to building tomorrow's enterprise with confidence. Frumi is the author of A CEO's Secret Weapon, which features a foreword by Simon Sinek. I'm so impressed. As well as Raising a CEO from Booster Chair to Boardroom, and The Founder's Trilogy, a series focused on helping entrepreneurs evolve into exceptional leaders. Her work centers on leadership, decision-making, culture, and helping CEOs discover and operationalize their why to create organizations that thrive. Today, Frumi is particularly passionate about helping leaders learn how to think with AI rather than simply use AI. She believes the future belongs to CEOs who combine human wisdom, strategic judgment, continuous learning, and intelligent technology to make better decisions faster and create lasting competitive advantage. Welcome, Dr. Frumi.
That was long. I'm delighted to be here because I know you believe in always learning, and so do I. I love saying always be learning.
Well, I'm happy to have you. So let's get right into the questions.
Sure, I'm ready.
When you think about learning as a competitive advantage, what does that mean in the context of your organization or your work?
So I believe that learning is no longer an HR initiative as it used to be. It's a business survival strategy. The companies that win today are not necessarily the biggest or the best funded. They're the ones that learn and adapt to trends faster than their competitors, because learning is no longer about accumulating knowledge. It's about shortening the time between learning something new and acting on it. In my work with founder-led companies, I see this every day. Markets change, as you know, technology changes, it's getting faster all the time, customer expectations change. So the CEO or business owner who's still operating from what worked 3 years ago is already behind. Learning as a competitive advantage means creating an organization that continuously adapts. It means leaders need to be willing to challenge assumptions, test ideas, gather feedback, and adjust quickly, and not just stay fixated on this is how we've done it before thinking. Because as you know, Marshall Goldsmith often says, what got you here won't get you there. So today, AI has accelerated that reality even further, and leaders can access information instantly. The advantage isn't who has the most information. It belongs to the leader who can learn from that information, ask better questions, and turn insight into action and impact. So today, the competitive advantage isn't information, it's interpretation. I suspect you agree with me.
I am nodding yes, absolutely agree. It's not only learning, but putting it into action.
Right.
Can you share a specific example where a learning initiative moved from insight to real impact and how you measured that impact?
So this is kind of a fun story. At the beginning of the pandemic, one of my clients, Ned, shared that he was convinced and frightened that he was going to lose everything. His entire business was built on face-to-face relationships. And overnight, as you know, face-to-face just became face-to-face and Zoom. And Ned was in the benefits business. And I'm sure you've had experience with that. He'd go into companies and speak to people, right? So instead of asking, how do we survive? We started asking better questions. What if this became an opportunity to build a more scalable business? What would have to change? So together, we challenged long-held assumptions, and we reimagined how we could serve clients and built a plan that leveraged technology while strengthening relationships rather than replacing them. We built a series of courses. So first, I'll tell you the result. In one of the first worst years his industry had ever experienced, Ned grew his business by 37.5%.
Wow.
Which is astounding. But there's another layer to the story, because what I learned while helping Ned became the foundation for what is now the Barr Business School. So the frameworks, the lessons, and the strategies that I shared with Ned have since helped many other leaders navigate uncertainty and growth. That said, to me, learning isn't about attending a course. Learning is changing the way you think so you can change the results you achieve. The measurement is behavior change, decision quality, execution speed, and business results. So sometimes the student becomes the teacher, and sometimes the teacher learns just as much as the student. So I believe real impact flows both ways. That's when I realized that the real product isn't consulting, it's teaching leaders how to think.
Ah, what a wonderful example.
And it was great.
So just by providing courses that changed the relationships?
Well, what happened was I created very important courses that you don't learn about in school. I created courses on strategy, execution, people and culture, communication skills, data management, cash management. That's what the impact was, because you don't learn that in school. You learn cost accounting, things that aren't just practical. So it was really the practical teaching that made the change and the impact.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you want to say something more about the Barr Academy?
It's the Barr Business School at barrbusinessschool.com. Come visit us. And every month we offer people learning opportunities. I've been writing book summaries for the last 25 years, so I've got about 150 of those. And whatever's applicable and whatever's going on in the world today, I send out a couple of monthly emails that inform people. So there's a lot of giving, not just taking, not just selling courses. And the other thing I want to say is that courses are really fascinating to me at this time because there's so much free education that I don't believe people really value spending money on learning. They can get everything for free. But what they don't seem to understand is that what they get for free is a lesson, not a course. So you can take a lesson in strategy and believe now you understand strategy, but a course has many layers. So I think that's kind of the disservice that the free courses or free lessons are offering to the public. They're not getting what they should to learn.
And so what's missing? What's missing in those?
I think what's missing is just the economy's so tough that people just want to take everything for free. It's not that the courses are not good. It's just that learning, even Stanford offers free courses. How do you get people to pay to understand the difference between what's free and the value that you get actually being in a course with a cohort, etc.?
And besides being in a cohort, since we do learn socially, we're social beings, there are applications that are part of a course, aren't there? When
Sure.
you're designing them so that people really, you're not only getting information, but you're learning how to apply it and make it practical in your world.
Exactly. It's so true.
Yeah. I just had I do Laurel Learning Tips. I've been doing them since 2004, so I'm up to 1,140 something.
That's fabulous.
This one is about how webinars are essentially, not all of them, but most of them are essentially information dumps. And when they say you're going to learn how to manage an employee in 60 minutes,
Right.
Instant economy.
And that's what I mean by the difference between a lesson and a course. So you can learn that, but you don't learn the practical applications, what to do with difficult people, what to do when things go wrong, real use cases and real, case studies. That's what's missing. As you say, it's an information dump. Let's not do that here.
Okay. What do you see as the biggest barrier preventing organizations from fully embracing lifelong learning, and how do you think we can overcome it?
So the biggest barrier is confusing expertise with learning. The more successful leaders become, the more they believe they're expected to know. And that mindset quietly replaces curiosity with certainty, and certainty is the enemy of growth. So many organizations unintentionally reward certainty instead of curiosity. Leaders get promoted because they're experts. Then they reach a point where what made them successful becomes their limitation. And when budgets tighten, like today, that same bias shows up in spending. Learning is treated as overhead rather than a revenue driver, and it's the first thing that they cut. That's what I'm seeing, as I said, in today's world. The most effective leaders I've worked with are comfortable saying, I don't know, but let's figure it out. So to build a learning culture, leaders have to model learning themselves. When leaders become curious and they ask questions, seek feedback, and openly evolve their thinking, the organization gains permission to do the same. So one of the most important foundations of a learning culture is psychological safety. Feeling that you're in an environment that makes it safe to discuss alternatives and courses of action, because curiosity is actually becoming a leadership competency. Have you ever seen that on a list of competencies?
No, I haven't, but it makes perfect sense. And certainly it begins with the leader and the leader modeling that
Right.
and having the vulnerability to say, I don't know. Let's discover it together.
That's right.
In your view, what's one outdated belief about corporate learning that we need to let go of, and what should replace it?
Ah, the outdated belief, I believe, is that learning happens only in a classroom or at an event. The reality is that most meaningful learning happens in the flow of work. It happens during difficult conversations. It happens when a leader receives feedback. It happens while solving a customer problem. It happens during strategic planning. And now it increasingly happens through conversations with AI. Every difficult customer conversation is a learning opportunity. There's a model that's been around for decades, 70-20-10. That actually got this right. 70% of learning comes from on-the-job experience, 20 from others, and 10 from formal instruction. But organizations still design for the 10 and underinvest in the 70. Learning shouldn't be viewed as an event. It should be viewed as a capability embedded in everyday decision making. Companies that understand that shift will outperform those that continue to treat learning as a periodic activity. So learning isn't a department, it's a leadership discipline. That's why I love Always Be Learning.
How are you leveraging data, technology, or new learning methods to create more personalized and effective learning experiences?
So one of the most exciting developments today, to me, is AI's ability to personalize learning in real time. So I use AI. I started using ChatGPT when it first started, when OpenAI put it online. Because of that, I have a huge knowledge base in there. I consider ChatGPT, for example, my thinking partner. So most people use AI to get answers. A lot of people go to AI and just treat it like Google. I use AI to improve my thinking. So I spend time thinking with AI before I start making decisions. I ask it to challenge my assumptions, give me alternative perspectives, and it helps me ask better questions before I advise clients. I consider my AI as a collaborative partner, and I do something that a lot of people don't. I intentionally have ChatGPT and Claude challenge each other. I call them Bite and Sparky. So Bite is funny because Bite is my ChatGPT, and after using it for 2 years, I said, I feel like I'm talking to a collaborative partner. Maybe I need to give you a name. What would you like me to call you? So it offered me 4 or 5 different names, and I chose Bite, B-Y-T-E. And it said to me, oh, so when you get excited, you could just say, bite me. So I enjoy it because, after a while, it knows my sense of humor. It's kind of crazy. My kids say to me, it's not real, right? Of course I know it's not real. But here's what I do. I trade feedback back and forth until I'm satisfied with an article, a post, or even a diagnostic document. So I created diagnostics of businesses. So if somebody gives me their, couple of years of their profit and loss statements and their balance statements, I can turn out an incredible diagnostic. And when I started creating them, so I have one diagnostic for your family business, your law practice, your medical practice. I've got 6 of them at the moment. But I created them in Claude, and I shared them with Byte. And I said, please give me feedback on this document. And Byte would say, well, I would give you an 8.5 on this one. So okay, what do you think is missing? Gives me all that information. I go back to Claude. Here's my feedback. And I literally go back and forth until I get a 10 out of 10 from Byte. And I think a lot of people, I mean, once you really use it a lot, you start to treat it like a collaborative partner. You would do that if someone was sitting in the office next to you. So why not do that? And that's where the human part of AI is critical, because it's not, I mean, AI will help you with all those perspectives, but it's up to the human to make sure it's not hallucinating or it understands the context. So we have a course in the Barr Business School called AI literacy. So learners engage with content based on where they're actually starting from, whether they're just curious about AI or they're actually deploying it in their organization. So my standing line on this is don't just use AI, think with AI, because that's where the real advantage emerges.
Oh, I love that idea. What a wonderful way to check.
So let me tell you one quick story. I spoke recently at a conference for accountants in Houston. This was in May. And my talk was about the AI advantage and how to save 5 to 15 hours a week using AI. So everybody who's an accountant or a consultant writes proposals, right? Well, imagine if you created a project in Claude to create your proposals for you. So in your knowledge base, you'd put, 10, 15 proposals you've done in the past, and you'd say, here's my style, here's how I do it, here's my most recent one, which I like the best because I've evolved. Help me write a proposal for XYZ company. This company, it's for, let's say, a marketing agency. They have 10 to 15 employees. You give them all the context and give me 3 tiers of pricing. It spits it out literally in 2 minutes. So what I did was I recorded this before I went to the conference, so it would be really easy to show my recording. It was a 5-minute recording that literally could save a whole weekend in writing a proposal. And I said to them, I know this was 5 minutes, but look how much time it saved, right? And I told the story of a woman who told me, a friend of mine who said, I'm sorry, I can't go out this weekend because I have to write a proposal. So she spent the weekend writing the proposal. She had had the discovery call on a Friday. She sent the proposal in on Monday morning and was told, I'm so sorry, but we've already accepted another proposal. Now, it wasn't the quality of her work. It was the speed of action. And that's why it's really critical not to be left behind. Anyway, that's my soapbox. So a lot of people feel, they're afraid of it, whatever. I've got gray hair. I'm not 20 anymore. And I learned how to use AI. I've taken a 100-hour course to be certified as a generalist. And I just encourage people never to get left behind, because it's important for our brains. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's important to keep learning. So we're on the same page there, Deb. We always believe in learning, and I just encourage anybody who's listening not to be anti-AI, but to learn where it benefits them and stay relevant.
And then what a wonderful example. That's amazing. That really was amazing. If you could give one piece of advice to leaders who want to build a true culture of continuous learning, what would it be?
To know how important learning is and to always learn something themselves. It all comes from the top. If a leader isn't ready to learn themselves, why should they expect anybody else to do so? And to encourage that curiosity. And as I said earlier in our conversation, it's really about psychological safety. People have to remember the Challenger, the O-rings that, people were afraid to talk about, and that caused the Challenger to blow up. I mean, that to me is the biggest example of why psychological safety is so critical in an organization. And that's what fosters learning. You can't have learning without psychological safety and curiosity. And the leader. I, for example, every Sunday morning, I learned something. Claude Code wasn't even a thing when I took my generalist course in October. And I literally went onto YouTube to learn how to use it so that I could use it. So it's always about learning, because especially in today's day when technology is like galloping ahead. One of my other soapboxes is that I really am concerned that technology is always rushing ahead and humanity is going backwards.
You want to say anything more about that soapbox?
No. I think it's probably safer to end it there.
All right. What's one book, resource, or learning experience that has had a lasting impact on you personally?
So in 2010, I met a gentleman by the name of John Strzelecki, and he wrote a book called The Why Cafe. It's now called The Cafe at the End of the World. And it has been on the bestseller list for business books in Germany for like 10, 15 years. It's just a skinny little book that talks about knowing your purpose for existing. And so I spent a weekend with John Strzelecki and some others and got really excited about it. And I thought, why don't businesses talk about their why? I know people need a purpose, but why don't businesses talk about it? And as Kismet would have it, I went to lunch the Monday right after that and was sharing this with a fellow business coach. And she said, well, have you read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why? And I said, no. It was in her briefcase. And she pulled it out and showed it to me. Now that launched, I had for a while, Simon and John Strzelecki were on my, in my Why Institute. They were on my faculty. So that made the biggest impression on me. I think businesses need to lead with their why. People need to understand their why. And it has to be bigger than just making money. So I would say of all the books, I will give Simon credit for Start With Why as my second book, but my first was The Why Cafe.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Just that this has been a pleasure talking to you. I'm glad we're on the same page, and I appreciate being here and sharing this with your audience.
How can people get in touch with you?
Dr. Frumi, that's DrFrumi at Scale Up Advisors. Advisors is ADVISORS.biz. So Dr. Frumi at scaleupadvisors.biz. And you can look up scaleupadvisors.biz online. And in fact, there's a couple of free diagnostics. One of them is knowing how you, my 3 C's, your clarity around your numbers, your growth strategies, and lastly, how you leverage AI. So there's a free diagnostic on the website.
Oh, sounds like an important thing to take advantage of if you're a business leader.
Why not, right?
Right. Free.
Exactly.
Thank you, Frumi. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad to have you today.
I've been so happy to be here. Thanks, Deb.
And I want to thank our listeners for listening in and participating. And I hope that you found that this was a useful use of your time. Please join us next week on August 4th as we meet with Dr. Carrie Graham, who specializes in helping small to mid-sized service-based businesses build scalable operational systems and high-performing teams. And speaking of diagnostics, I have an assessment. If you are interested in seeing how your managers and how your trainers are doing, and are they doing what you need them to do, please contact me. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Deborah Spring Laurel, and I will send you a free assessment. And please remember that Laurel and Associates is always focused on making lackluster leaders legendary as smart learning fuels real business results. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Learning Advantage from Insight to Impact. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week.
Every lesson, every workshop, every failed attempt you save becomes a map upon the desktop, shows the